I often hear people asking the question, what advice would you give to your younger self? Which can be an interesting question to ask, I guess, but it's not exactly the most pragmatic question, since we can't go back in time and change things that we did or didn't do. I think there's a better question to be asking ourselves, and it's something that can shape our behaviors and actions in the present. And it's a framing technique that I use all the time. And it all starts with writing a book that won't be finished for decades to come.
So many of you know I recently published a memoir. Don't worry, I'm not asking you to do the same thing. But there are some benefits I drew from it that can be a good thought exercise for anyone. So over the course of my life, I've overcome the odd physical and mental challenge here and there. For those of you who don't know much about me, I contracted a disease called meningococcal septicemia and I lost both arms and both legs. I don't take half measures. I spent 18 months in a hospital, relearning to walk with prosthetics and use hooks for everything that you use hands for. So I found that often adversity in your life begs a decision of you, a choice about direction of how to move forward. Or sometimes it's about garnering the courage to do something. But for me, one of the most crucial crossroads was the decision to have my arms amputated. It was a decision that I made, I'm pleased to say, but it was also somewhat of a critical juncture for me. A new future had been drafted for me, to which I was fully committed. I wanted to look back on that decision and be proud that I'd made it, and that I'd made the best of the situation. That's where I found a particular framing technique useful that I like to call the author.
I'd like you to close your eyes for a second and imagine yourself as an 80-year-old version of yourself. You're still in reasonable health, but you can't do what you once did. You decide to sit down and write an autobiography or a memoir of your life. What kind of stories would you like to write about? What kind of character would you like to be? What would you think of yourself and the life that you've led?
Memoirs, by their very nature, are seldom a dispassionate chronological account of one's life. They're filled with enthralling anecdotes, stories of failed careers, and unexpected successes. A good autobiography has a journey with ebbs and flows. But by imagining yourself as your own 80-year-old autobiographer, you have the power to write this story as it's happening.
Playing the role of the author is the process by which you imagine yourself in the future as an author writing their own life story, looking back on you in the present moment and asking yourself a series of questions. You have all the benefits of subjectivity by being the person that you're writing about, but you're also able to self-distance to an extent and have a more objective view on behaviors and decisions that you might make in the present.
By doing this, you can scrutinize your present-day behaviors, actions, and decisions through a different frame. By envisaging your future self as the author and your present self as the main character, you gain the insight to ask the right questions and make decisions today that will shape a compelling and meaningful story in your autobiography. What story would I be proud to write? What actions would have been advisable? And which would be authentic or a good testament to my character? How does my decision-making during turbulent times reflect my values? Which path should I, the character, take? And if I continue on this track, who will I become 10 chapters later? I think the author can also sometimes give me a healthy exposure to risk. For example, I've had 1 or 2 career changes in my life, and with every new endeavor, a certain amount of risk is involved. And risk is often avoided out of fear. Fear of losing something, or being thought foolish, or even just fear of the unknown. So a lot of decisions that we make as humans are made out of fear, and sometimes this fear drives inaction more than action itself. As we know from Daniel Kahneman's prospect theory, potential losses loom larger than potential gains. So what reservations do you have about current inactions? Are you too fearful to start your own business, move on from relationships that are less than ideal, or a job that gives you disproportionately more pain than purpose? Fearing what might happen if you address these issues can lead to inaction. Would these inactions lead you to continue down the same path as you are today? And would the 80-year-old autobiographer of your life be proud for having overcome those fears, or disappointed that you didn't risk trying for better outcomes? Now, you don't always have to listen to the advice of the author, but the author is there to give you a different perspective on your current reality. In some instances, it may help to reveal subconscious intentions, or to elucidate values otherwise shrouded by your fears, reservations, or even just the background noise of life.
By envisaging yourself as a future author of your own autobiography, you gain a particular insight on what kind of questions you should ask your current self on decision and path, something that would write a better story. So the next time you're asked what advice would you give to your younger self, try asking that person what advice their future self would give their present self to ensure they authored the best and most authentic story of their lives.
Today's quote comes from Soren Kierkegaard, who said, "Life can only be understood backwards, but must be lived forwards." Now, I chose this quote because on face value it seems to contradict the idea of the author, but I don't think it does. I think the quote most obviously is trying to indicate that life is best understood when reflecting on our past. But I also believe the second part of the quote, stating that life must be lived forwards, says more than just that we need to follow the arrow of time. I think it also indicates that the past cannot be changed, and therefore it's useless to dwell on the past. We must keep living our lives in a forward direction, being aware of our past, but also making bold decisions as to the direction of our future. As always, if you'd like a quote featured in one of these episodes, throw it in the comments or send it to me somehow, and I'll try and fit it in. And that's all from me.